This video explains how I repaired the Reluctor Ring on the left-hand rear drive shaft. These are the outlined steps for the whole procedure. Step 1. Remove the hub nut. This is a collar nut and the collar has to be prised out of the notched shaft before removing. A deep socket allows the nut to be loosened with the wheel on. I used a tube to extend the leverage on the breaker bar. Step 2. Remove the 6 E12 bolts from the transmission drive shaft. This is a view looking in from the wheel arch. This shot gives a clearer view of the bolts with the drive shaft removed. There are 6 bolts and 3 link plates. I used a spanner as I could not easily attach the socket. It is easier to attach the socket once you know the rubber is in the way. I used a tube extender to give me more leverage with the spanner as these nuts are quite tight. The shaft has to be turned to access each of the bolts, which means the wheel has to be turned. You need to allow for this in your planning. Step 3. Removing the half shaft. It could be hammered out, but I used a puller to avoid any damage. I had to modify the puller because the lip on the hub did not allow it to attach properly. The wheel bolts are not long enough to securely attach the puller. I invested in a hub puller as I was not comfortable with hammering out the half shaft. I needed to get more thread to make contact before pulling. I ground the edges of the puller to get enough clearance from the lip and to get the bolts firmly attached. Step 4. Removing the reluctor ring. With the half shaft removed, we can inspect the reluctor ring. The shiny parts of the ring are where the sensor was rubbing against the ring. Eventually it will damage the sensor. In my case I caught it early and the sensor was not damaged. The fault develops as rust builds up between the shaft and the reluctor ring. This shows the replacement ring compared with the damaged one. Removing the old ring is quite straightforward. The ring is made of much softer metal than the shaft. As I mentioned in my previous video, we have 3 choices. Replace the drive shaft with an original BMW part. Replace the drive shaft with an aftermarket part. Both new shafts come with a reluctor ring pre-installed. And the third option, which this video is about, is to replace just the reluctor ring itself. There was considerable build-up of rust between the ring and the shaft. This shaft is 11 years old and had done around 170,000 kilometers in an Irish wet climate. Step 5. Clean the shaft and fit the new reluctor ring. I used an angle grinder with a wire brush and was quite aggressive in removing the rust. You can see the impression that the reluctor wheel left on the shaft. The shaft cleaned up very well. The new ring was a tight fit and I was able to tap it on with a hammer. There are adhesives available if the ring is too loose on the shaft. My only regret was not painting the shaft with a rust-proof paint before reinstalling it. Here I am fitting the threaded sleeve from the universal puller onto the splined drive shaft. These pullers come with a selection of threaded collars. Make sure it includes one that fits the threads on your drive shaft. I invested in these tools because the Reluctor Ring only cost me €5. A new BMW shaft was over 600, and the full dealer repair for the previous right-hand Reluctor Ring was over €1,000. I fitted a new BMW collar nut when I was finished, as I could not be certain of the quality available online. This is just a reminder of how the connection to the transmission is made. Getting the bolt started can be tricky. I had a chalk mark to assist, but the threads have to be accurately aligned. The rubber hanger has to also be reconnected. This is the deep 30mm 12-point socket that I used. The advantage is that it can be used with the wheels still on by removing the hubcap. I needed a lot of leverage to remove the old collar nut. This is the puller that I used to push the drive shaft out. As I mentioned, I had to grind away some metal so that I could seat it properly and get enough thread engaged to be secure. This is the universal puller set, and this is the correct fitting that fits the drive shaft. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful in understanding what needs to be done to replace the Reluctor Ring. Make sure to tighten the collar nut and punch it into the slots on the drive shaft. Remember to be very careful when working under your car. Thank you.